Hook. She heard the notification ping and with trembling hands opened the screen. There it was, another woman's name, and suddenly the apartment felt alien, cold, and lifeless. The kitchen glowed like a promise. Golden light pooled over the marble countertop, illuminating Marina's hands as she arranged seared scallops on porcelain plates. Rosemary and lemon zest hung in the air, warm and familiar, a scent that had always summoned Andrei from the depths of his study. Tonight, it curled uselessly toward the ceiling. She checked her phone for the third time. 8:17 p.m. 10 minutes late. Traffic, she told herself, plucking a stray time leaf from the sauce. Or that meeting he mentioned. Her reflection in the oven door smiled back, soft, expectant. The kind of smile that had kept their life looking seamless. The door clicked open at 8:43. Andrei stood in the hallway, coat still on, briefcase dangling from his hand. His hair was neatly combed, his shirt unwrinkled. The right kind of late. Marina's pulse quickened. She stepped toward him, the scent of garlic clinging to her fingers. "You're here." He kissed her cheek, brief as a handshake. His jaw tightened when he saw the table. "You cooked." Not a question, a fact, stated like a complaint. "It's your favorite," she said, gesturing to the scallops. The sauce glistened under the pendant light, warm surfaces hiding cold interiors. He slid into his chair without unbuttoning his coat. She poured 2 glasses of wine. The clink of crystal filled the silence. "Long day?" "Usual." He pushed the scallops around his plate. The tines of his fork dragged through the sauce, leaving a trail like a fracture line. Marina's smile didn't waver. She remembered the first time she'd made this dish, 3 years ago, in their tiny apartment. He'd held her wrists, whispering how she made even Tuesday feel sacred. Now, his eyes kept drifting to the window, where the city's neon bled through the curtains.
Why isn't he looking at me?
She refilled his wine glass, her hand steady. "The neighbors asked about you, said they haven't seen you in weeks." A flicker in his throat. The scallops cooled. Steam rose in ghostly wisps, then vanished. Marina's chest tightened. She'd planned every detail. The candlelight, the jazz album humming under the kitchen speaker, the way she'd touch his knee under the table. A performance of us. But the silence between bites grew heavier, suffocating. Andrei set his fork down. "I need to check something." He stood, leaving his plate nearly full. The chair scraped against the floor. Marina watched him retreat to the study, the door closing with a soft click. The music played on, Miles Davis's trumpet winding through the empty dining room. She stared at her own plate. The scallops were cold now. The sauce congealed at the edges, dull as tarnished silver. Outside, a car horn blared. Somewhere, a couple laughed. Marina traced the rim of her wine glass, the stem cool against her thumb. Perfect love exists and can overcome anything, she'd told herself for years. But the lie felt thin tonight, like paper held up to a flame. The candle flickered. Shadows stretched across the table, swallowing the untouched food. She wondered if he'd ever taste it, if he'd ever taste her again. The house held its breath, warm, quiet, and utterly hollow. The lamplight pooled in honeyed swirls across the nightstand, gilding the edges of Andrei's phone where it lay, screen dark, as if hibernating. Marina's breath hitched in the space between his slow exhales. His arm, usually draped over her waist, now rested rigidly at his side, a chasm of sheets separating them. She traced the line of his jaw, familiar yet alien in sleep. Last week, he'd flinched when she touched his shoulder. Stress, she'd told herself. The project deadlines. But the excuses felt like tissue paper now, thin and tearing. His phone buzzed. A silent vibration, but the bed shuddered. Marina froze. Andrei didn't stir. The device lit up, casting a faint blue glow on the wall. Sophia, before the screen died. Her stomach dropped. 3 nights ago, he'd laughed at a text, then turned the phone face down. "Work," he'd said, kissing her forehead. But his lips had been too quick, too practiced. Now, the silence between them was a living thing, thick as the down comforter they'd bought during their Paris trip, the one she'd insisted on, convinced it would bind them closer. It was warm. It was suffocating. She remembered the way he used to leave his phone in the kitchen, charging. No secrets, he'd joked. Now it lived in his pocket, his hand twitching toward it during dinner. Last Sunday, he'd taken a call on the balcony, voice low, shoulders hunched against the wind. She'd pretended not to notice the way he'd avoided her gaze afterward. Perfect love conquers all, she'd whispered to herself like a mantra, but the words rang hollow now, a song with no melody. Another buzz. This time, the screen flickered. Sophia, again. Marina's pulse roared in her ears. Andrei shifted, murmuring something unintelligible. Why won't he wake? The question clawed at her throat. Was it indifference? Or had she become so invisible that even his guilt couldn't rouse him? The phone's glow illuminated the dust motes in the air, turning them into constellations of doubt. She thought of Elena's warning. You're building a house on sand, Masha. But the alternative was unthinkable. To be alone. To admit the life she'd curated, the love she'd worshipped, was a stage set. The phone went dark. The room seemed to exhale. Yet the tension lingered, coiled in the space between his back and her stillness. She reached out, not to touch him, but to hover her fingers above the device. It felt cold. What truth is worth this ache? The question hung, unspoken. Outside, a siren wailed, a distant, mournful sound. The warmth of the room pressed in, a gilded cage. Marina closed her eyes, but the darkness behind her lids was no refuge. It was a mirror. The amber glow of Elena's living room wrapped around Marina like a familiar blanket, the kind that usually soothed her frayed nerves. Plush velvet cushions, the scent of vanilla candles, the soft hum of a radiator. Every detail screamed safety. But tonight, the warmth felt like a lie. Marina traced the rim of her teacup, the ceramic cool against her fingers, as she forced the words out. He hasn't touched me in 3 weeks. Not even a hand on my back when we pass in the hall. Elena settled into the armchair opposite, her smile gentle but practiced. Marina, he's stressed. The merger is eating him alive. She gestured toward the window, where the city lights blurred into streaks of gold. You're reading into shadows. Remember when you thought he was cheating last year? It was just that awful client he had to deal with. Marina's chest tightened. Shadows. The word echoed in her skull. She'd watched Andrei's shoulders tense whenever his phone lit up on the coffee table, the way his jaw clenched when he vanished into the study, the door clicking shut with finality. But Elena's tone was light, dismissive, as if Marina were a child mistaking rain for a storm. It's not just stress, she whispered. He looks at me like I'm a stranger. Elena leaned forward, her hand brushing Marina's. Love isn't perfect, Dragaya. It's messy. You're letting fear write the story. Her eyes, warm and certain, held Marina's. What if you're the one pushing him away? The words landed like a stone. Marina's breath hitched. She'd rehearsed this moment for days. I need you to believe me. But Elena's doubt seeped into her bones, turning suspicion into self-reproach. Maybe it is me. Maybe I'm broken. She glanced at the hallway mirror, its gilded frame catching the candlelight. Her reflection stared back, hair neatly pinned, sweater flawless, a faint smile clinging to her lips. The same face she'd worn at dinner last night, when Andrei had sat across from her, silent, his fork pushing food around the plate like he was carving a grave. Elena's voice softened. You're chasing ghosts. Let it go. Marina nodded, but her fingers trembled against the cup. The room's warmth pressed in, suffocating. If I ignore it, will it disappear? She thought of Andrei's empty side of the bed, the way his cologne lingered on the pillowcase like a ghost. The mirror reflected a woman who looked unbroken. But inside, The cracks were spreading. Elena refilled her tea, oblivious. "You'll see. By next week, you'll laugh at this." Marina forced a smile, the kind that had gotten her through boardroom negotiations and family weddings. But as she stood to leave, her reflection in the mirror lingered a second too long. A stranger in a perfect frame. The question hung, unspoken, between the velvet curtains and the flickering candles. If you never look, can the truth ever hurt you? The living room glowed with the honeyed warmth of a single table lamp, casting long shadows across the cream-colored sofa. Marina traced the edge of a throw pillow, its silk threads fraying under her fingertips. Outside, the city hummed, a muffled lullaby of distant sirens and closing shop doors. But inside, the air was thick, as if the walls had absorbed every unspoken word of the last 6 months. Andrei's phone lay face down on the coffee table, its screen dark, a silent intruder in the room's carefully curated calm. She'd told herself not to look. "He's just tired," she'd whispered this morning, her voice brittle as the porcelain mug she'd clutched. But the silence between them had grown teeth. A flicker of movement caught her eye. The phone screen lit up, casting a cold blue pulse against the wood grain. Sophia. The name bloomed like a bruise. Marina's breath hitched. She told her hands not to move, but they did, sliding the phone toward her, the glass cool against her palm. The message was brief, a dagger wrapped in velvet. "You promised to call. I'm still here." Her chest caved in. The room tilted. The lamp's glow suddenly felt like a lie, its warmth a thin veneer over the chill seeping into her bones. She remembered Sophia's laugh at last month's dinner party. Light, unburdened, the kind Andrei used to save for her. Now it echoed in the hollow where her trust had been. The phone trembled. She could delete the message, pretend she hadn't seen it. Perfect love exists, she'd believed, even as the cracks widened. But here was the fracture. Sophia's words, stark and undeniable, bleeding through the screen. Andrei's keys jingled at the door. Marina dropped the phone, its screen shattering the silence with a soft thud. She stood, smoothing her skirt, forcing her pulse to slow. "Just breathe. Ask him." But the words stuck in her throat like glass. To confront him would shatter the fragile peace of this room, this life. To stay silent would mean swallowing the lie again, letting the warm surfaces hide the cold interior. He stepped inside, his coat smelling of rain and something else, something unfamiliar. "You okay?" he asked, not meeting her eyes. She stared at the phone on the table, its screen now dark. The truth glowed there, invisible but searing. What now? The question clawed at her ribs. To run, to stay, to rip the bandage off or let the infection fester. The lamp's glow softened his shoulders, made him look like the man she'd loved. But the coldness in her hands told another story. The city outside kept humming. The coffee table held its breath. Marina's fingers curled into fists, nails biting crescents into her palms. Somewhere, a clock ticked. Somewhere, Sophia waited. And the lie, once a shelter, now felt like a cage. The amber glow of the dining lamp cast honeyed pools across the oak table, its polished surface reflecting Marina's trembling fingers. She'd set 2 place settings, her grandmother's porcelain, the kind Andrei always praised for its timeless warmth. Now, the plates felt like shields between them. "You're avoiding me," she said, voice steady until the last word cracked. Andrei didn't look up from his wine. "I'm tired." "Tired of me?" She leaned forward, the chair's legs scraping like a scream. "Or tired of lying?" His glass froze halfway to his lips. For a heartbeat she saw it, the flicker of guilt, the crack in his mask. Hope flared, sharp and sudden. "He'll tell me. He has to." Then his jaw locked. "Lying about what? You're hallucinating. Again." The words were ice, but the table remained warm beneath her palms. She'd polished it that morning, humming, believing in the illusion of normalcy. Now, the wood's smoothness felt like a taunt. "I saw the texts," she pressed, softer. "Sophia's name. The hotel receipt." Andrei slammed his glass down. Wine sloshed, staining the white tablecloth like blood. "You spied on me?" His laugh was a blade. "You're unhinged. Always have been." The room tilted, her chest hollowed. This wasn't the man who'd promised forever over candlelight, who'd traced her jawline and whispered, "You're my truth." Now, his eyes were stone. "Why won't you just say it?" Her voice frayed. "If it's over, say it. Don't leave me in this." "This?" He stood, chair legs shrieking. "This is your mess. Your paranoia. Sophia's a colleague. You're suffocating me with your drama." The porcelain plate wobbled as he grabbed his keys. She reached for his wrist, but he yanked away, knuckles white. The table, once a hearth, a sanctuary, now felt like a battleground, its warmth a lie. "Stay," she begged, the word crumbling. He paused at the door, back rigid. "Fix your head, Marina." The click of the lock echoed like a tomb ceiling. She sank into the chair, staring at the wine stain spreading across the wood. The lamp still glowed, golden and kind. Outside, a car engine roared to life. Inside, the silence hummed with everything unspoken. She pressed her palms to the table, searching for heat. It was cold now. Marina's fingers hovered over the phone, the glow of its screen cutting through the dim living room like a surgical light. The apartment was a museum of warm pretenses. The buttery lamplight, the plush velvet couch, the framed photos of them laughing on Santorini. All a lie. Her breath hitched as she scrolled through Andrei's browser history, the heat of the device burning her palm. Incognito mode. Of course. She'd known the signs for weeks. The way he'd turn his phone face down, the sudden overtime shifts, the perfume that clung to his collar like a ghost. But denial was a luxury she could no longer afford. The first crack in the illusion came at 3 a.m. when she'd woken to find him typing furiously in the kitchen, his back rigid, the screen's blue pulse casting shadows like prison bars. Sophia. The name had flashed once before in his messages, dismissed as a coworker. Now it was everywhere, subtle, insidious. Marina's thumb trembled as she tapped the call log, the screen blurring with tears. Why? The question wasn't for him. It was for the woman she'd become. Smaller, quieter, folding herself into the shape of his comfort. She'd installed the tracking app after the third, late meeting, her stomach twisting as she read the terms of service. By proceeding, you acknowledge the ethical implications. She'd clicked, agree. Ethics were a currency she no longer had. The map pinged. Andrei, 2.1 miles away, stationary. Her chest tightened. Liar. She threw on a coat, the cashmere soft against her skin, a cruel contrast to the ice in her veins. Outside, the city hummed with indifferent life, couples laughing over wine, taxis hissing through rain-slick streets. She hailed one, gripping the seat as the driver navigated toward the coordinates. What if he's there? What if he's not? The building was unassuming, a brick apartment complex with a glowing "For Rent" sign. She waited in the car, heart pounding, watching the entrance. 10 minutes. 20. Then, there. Andrei emerged, tie loose, hair disheveled, and her, Sophia, stepping into his space, a hand on his waist. Marina's vision tunneled. The warmth of the cab's heater felt like mockery. She raised her phone, zooming in, her breath fogging the glass. Click. A photo. Click. Another. Proof. But the images were hollow, just shapes in the dark. What she really wanted was the sound of his voice saying, "I'm sorry," the lie she'd built her life on. Her thumb hovered over the delete button. No. She opened the Notes app, typing, 10:47 p.m., 12th Street, 2nd floor. She touched his hip. The words were clinical, a dissection of the life she'd lost. The phone buzzed, Elena's name flashing. Call me, please. Marina silenced it. Her friend meant well, but Elena's, he's just stressed, and you're overreacting, had become another cage. A raindrop hit the windshield, smearing the building's lights into streaks of gold. She remembered the first time Andrei kissed her. On a rooftop, the city glittering like shattered glass. Perfect love conquers all. The lie had felt like truth then. Now, it tasted like ash. The cab driver glanced back. You okay, miss? Marina swallowed the scream in her throat. No, she was not okay. But she was no longer waiting for someone else to fix it. She opened the tracking app again, the map glowing like a lifeline. How far? The question echoed as she typed a new address into the GPS. Sophia's workplace. The phone's warmth was a promise. This ends now. The car pulled away, leaving the building's soft glow behind. Inside, the cold was absolute. The cafe hummed with the same honeyed light that had once wrapped them in promise. Golden afternoon sun, spilling over the oak tables. The scent of cardamom buns, curling like an old lover's whisper. Marina paused at the door, her fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. He said he'd be working late. The lie had felt flimsy that morning, a threadbare excuse, but she'd clung to it anyway. Hope was a habit, worn smooth by years of practiced denial. Inside, the warmth of the room pressed against her skin, suffocating in its familiarity. This was where they'd shared their first real conversation, where he'd traced the rim of her coffee cup and said, "You're the only truth I need." Now, the same wooden booth sat at the far corner, empty. Except it wasn't. Andrei's laugh cut through the jazz playlist, low and familiar. Her breath hitched. He was leaning across the table, his hand brushing Sophia's wrist. A gesture Marina had seen him use on her 100 times. Sophia's smile was effortless, her head tilted in that way that made her seem both intimate and untouchable. The steam rising from their shared pot of tea blurred the edges of the scene, as if reality itself was refusing to sharpen. Marina's pulse hammered in her throat. It's not what it looks like, the mantra echoed, but the image burned. His thumb stroking Sophia's knuckles, the way he leaned in as if the world narrowed to just the two of them. The same way he used to lean toward her. She forced her feet to move, sliding into a seat at the counter. A barista placed a cup of coffee before her. Black, no sugar. Just how Andrei liked it. The irony was a knife. She wrapped her hands around the ceramic, the heat seeping into her palms, but her fingers stayed numb. Outside, the street glowed with golden hour light, the kind that turned ordinary moments into postcards. Here, the warmth was a lie. The wood beneath her elbows felt cold. The laughter around her, a cage. Sophia laughed now, throwing her head back, and Andrei's smile widened. Her smile. The one that used to make Marina's chest ache with belonging. The truth wasn't in the grand gestures, she realized. It was in the small, unguarded moments. The way he held Sophia's gaze like it was a lifeline. The ease of their bodies in the same space. The way he didn't glance at the door, waiting for her. Her coffee turned to ash in her mouth. The cafe's golden glow suddenly felt like a spotlight, exposing every flaw in the illusion she'd built. This is where it ends, she thought. And the thought wasn't grief. It was relief, sharp and terrifying. The truth wasn't a clean break. It was a slow suffocation in a place that still smelled like home. She didn't follow them when they left, didn't confront, just sat there, watching the space where they'd been, the ghost of their laughter clinging to the air. The cup in her hands was empty, but she kept holding it, as if warmth could return. The streetlights flickered on outside. The cafe's windows glowed like a theater stage, warm and inviting from the street. Inside, the cold was settling in. The late afternoon sun bled through the lace curtains, gilding the porcelain teacup in Marina's hands. Its warmth seeped into her palms. but the liquid inside, bitter chamomile, tasted like the lies she'd swallowed for years. Across the table, Elena's fingers tightened around her own cup, the delicate handle trembling. The kitchen hummed with the false cheer of lemon-scented candles, their glow softening the cracks in the wallpaper. "You keep polishing the vase while the flowers are dead," Elena said, her voice low but unyielding. Marina's knuckles whitened. "Andrei loves me. He's just stressed."
The project at work. He canceled your mother's birthday dinner twice, Marina.
For a project he never mentions. Elena leaned forward, the candlelight carving shadows beneath her eyes. "You think Sophia's just his colleague? The way he texts her, I see it." A hot wave of denial surged. "You're projecting, because you left Alex, because I know what silence costs." Elena's voice cracked. "I stayed in my marriage until the lies were louder than my voice. Now look at me. Empty." She reached for Marina's hand, but Marina jerked back. The teacup wobbled, tea sloshing over the rim in a dark spreading stain. "Stop it," Marina whispered. "You don't know anything." "I know you've been scrubbing his coffee mugs at 2 a.m., Elena said. "I know you rehearse conversations in the shower. I know you're drowning in the quiet." Her gaze flickered to the ruined tablecloth. "You think the world sees a happy couple, but the truth? It's in the spaces between the words, the way he won't look at you when he lies." Marina's throat tightened. She remembered Andrei's hollow kiss that morning, the way his thumb had lingered on Sophia's wrist in the elevator. A coincidence, she'd told herself. Just stress. Now, the memory curdled like spoiled milk. "He's not her," Marina choked out. "He's mine." Elena exhaled, slow and heavy. "Is he? Or is he just the story you need to be true?" She pushed the teacup toward Marina, a chipped heirloom, its gold rim faded. "You keep waiting for him to fix this. But what if the truth is the only thing that can fix you?" The cup sat between them, steam rising like a ghost. Marina stared at the liquid, her reflection warped in the amber surface. The fear clawed at her ribs. If I let go, who am I? The lie had been a blanket, suffocating but familiar. Now, the cold air of reality pricked her skin. Elena's voice softened. "You don't have to believe me, but you have to stop pretending you don't see it too." A tear fell, diluting the tea. Marina didn't wipe it away. The cup's warmth was gone. All that remained was the weight of what she'd known all along. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent. Inside, the candle flickered, casting long, trembling shadows. The question hung unspoken. If truth is a knife, who holds it for you? The apartment hummed with the ghost of warmth, candles flickering on the dining table, a casserole cooling in the center, steam curling like a dying breath. Marina adjusted the napkins for the third time, her fingers trembling against the linen. She'd spent hours recreating Andrei's favorite dish, the one he'd praised years ago in a moment of rare tenderness. If I make it perfect, she thought, he'll remember us. The door clicked open. Andrei stood there, jacket slung over his shoulder, eyes fixed on his phone. His tie was loose, a smudge of lipstick, no, rouge, on his collar. He didn't look up. "Hungry?" Her voice was a fragile thread. He sighed, tossing his keys into a ceramic bowl, the one she'd bought at that pottery class they'd taken together. Before. "Tired." She gestured to the table. "I made Karelian pasties. You said they tasted like home." A muscle in his jaw twitched. "Home's not a meal, Marina." He pulled out a chair but didn't sit. The casserole's steam slowed, its scent fading into the room's heavy air. She stepped closer, reaching for his hand. "We used to talk here, remember? You tell me about your day?" "Used to." He yanked his hand back. The candlelight caught the sharp line of his cheekbone, the cold sheen in his eyes. "You're suffocating me." The words landed like a slap. She forced a smile, brittle as the pastry she'd baked. I just want us to be us again. Us? A humorless laugh. There is no us. The casserole's crust hardened, the filling congealing into a gray mass.
She stared at it, the warmth of the oven now a lie, the golden surface cracking to reveal the cold beneath.
Like us, she thought. Like me. He turned toward the bedroom, pausing at the threshold. Stop pretending this is fixable. The door shut. Marina stood frozen, the silence pressing in. She touched the casserole, lukewarm, already ruined. Her reflection in the oven door wavered, distorted by the glass. How long had he been gone? She'd been rearranging the furniture of a house already abandoned. Outside, a car engine rumbled to life. Her stomach clenched. Sophia? She didn't know, didn't want to know. The candle sputtered, then died. In the dark, the apartment felt like a stage set. Warm wood, soft fabrics, all hiding the hollow core. She traced the edge of the table, the place where his hand had been. Can you love a ghost? The answer sat heavy in the silence. Not love. Survival. She didn't move as the last heat seeped from the casserole, as the room grew colder.
Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. The question hovered, unspoken. When the truth is a knife, do you drop it or cut deeper? Marina's fingers trembled as she slid the drawer open, the smooth wood catching the dim glow of the bedside lamp. The room smelled of sandalwood and stale coffee. Andrei's cologne clung to the air like a lie. She told herself she wasn't searching for proof, just the receipt for the hotel he'd charged last week. A business trip, he'd said. His shirt still smelled of someone else's perfume. The drawer yielded cufflinks, a half-empty bottle of aspirin. She dug deeper, nails scraping the velvet lining. It's not real. It's not real. Her pulse throbbed in her throat. Then, a flash of silver. His laptop, hidden beneath a stack of old tax returns. Unplugged, but still warm. She hesitated. The lamp cast a honeyed light over the desk, gilding the grain of the oak. This is the last time, she thought. One more lie, and I stop. The screen flickered awake. Andrei's password was still saved. Her breath hitched as she navigated to the browser. History cleared, cookies purged. But there, in the corner of the screen, a single incognito tab, left open like a wound. Incognito, a word that meant hidden, but here it screamed exposed. She clicked it. The chat window bloomed with soft blue light. Sophia. The name pulsed like a heartbeat. I miss your hands on my neck, the last message read. Sent 2 hours ago. A photo attached. Andrei's wristwatch, her anniversary gift, glinting against Sophia's bare shoulder. Marina's vision tunneled. The lamp's warmth turned cloying, suffocating. The wood beneath her palms felt like ice. She scrolled. Dozens of messages, weeks of them. You're the only truth I have. I'll leave her soon. The words blurred. Her reflection in the screen was a ghost, pale, hollow. All those nights she'd rehearsed apologies in the mirror. I'm too demanding, I'll be better. And he'd been here, typing promises to someone else in the dark. The incognito tab mocked her. You can't hide truth from yourself forever. She slammed the laptop shut. The click echoed like a gunshot. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like space. The lamp's glow now exposed the cracks in the varnish, the splinters where the wood had split. Warm surfaces, cold interiors. She stood. The floorboards creaked under her weight, but her legs held. No more searching. No more lies. The question hung, sharp and unanswerable. How far must you fall to find the ground? Outside, the city hummed, indifferent. Inside, the truth burned clean. The cafe's heavy velvet curtains muffled the city's clamor, trapping a cocoon of radiator hum and porcelain clinks. Sunlight pierced the stained glass windows, casting amber veins across the table where Marina perched, hands clasped over her tepid tea. Her posture was rigid, a fortress against the storm she'd imagined unleashing. But inside, doubt flickered. What if she's not the monster I've built in my mind? Sophia entered like a shadow, her steps soft on the worn floorboards. Marina's grip tightened on her coat, knuckles paling. She'd scripted this confrontation. Venomous words, a slap echoing like thunder. But Sophia's eyes held no malice, only a quiet sorrow that pierced deeper than hate. "You're not what I pictured," Marina spat, her voice a shard of ice. Sophia's lips curved faintly, not a smile but a concession. She slid into the seat opposite, gesturing to a plate of untouched povitria, honey-laced pastries, Lviv's bittersweet gift. Andrei's childhood indulgence. The scent hung heavy, turning the air saccharine. "He spoke of you often," Sophia said, her fingers idly circling her cup. "Not with anger, with weariness. The house you keep immaculate, like a shrine to what was. He said it suffocates him, that he weeps where you can't hear." Marina's breath caught. How could she know that? The words burrowed like roots, cracking the foundation of her rage. Behind Sophia, the gilded mirror loomed, its surface rippling the light. In it, Marina glimpsed herself, not the avenger, but a woman frayed at the edges, eyes wide with unwelcome clarity. And Sophia? Her reflection merged with Marina's, twin faces in a shared distortion, one the betrayer, the other the betrayed, yet both hollowed by the same unseen force. "Why tell me this?" Marina whispered, her voice fracturing. "To twist the knife?" Sophia leaned in, the mirror capturing the glint of her faded wedding band, a relic of promises unkept. "I thought I was his escape, but he didn't leave for me. He left because he'd been drifting for years, beside you, pretending the silences were peace, the flinches were fatigue." Her gaze held steady, unflinching. "You built walls around each other, calling it love. But what if it's just isolation, mirrored back?" The revelation struck like a silent quake. Marina's mind reeled. The quiet dinners, Andrei's averted eyes, the way her touch had become a burden. Not infidelity's wound, but the slow erosion of truth. In the mirror, her reflection stared back, vulnerable and unfamiliar. Sophia's truth overlaying her own, forcing her to see the lie they'd both inhabited. Sophia rose, leaving the pastries as an offering unclaimed. "You're not the villain here, Marina. Neither is he, or I." At the door, her silhouette blurred in the glass, a fleeting echo. The bell tinkled, sealing the quiet. Marina faced the mirror alone, its amber glow now accusatory. Her pale, trembling image confronted her. What if love isn't the fortress I defended? What if it's two souls, each reflecting the other's unspoken fractures? The question lingered, unanswered, as the cafe's warmth dissolved into chill doubt. What was really happening in her marriage? All those years of polished perfection masking the void. The late afternoon sun bled through the gauzy curtains, gilding the scuffed oak floor, but doing nothing to warm the space between them. Marina stood by the kitchen island, fingers gripping the edge of the counter until her knuckles turned white. The scent of burnt coffee lingered, Andrei's, always too strong, never his fault. He lounged in the armchair, scrolling through his phone, the blue glow carving hollows beneath his eyes. Warm surfaces hiding cold interiors. "You knew Sophia had a daughter," she said. Not a question. The words were dry, stripped of tears, but the tremor in her throat gave her away. He didn't look up. "So?" The "so" hung like a knife. 3 weeks since she'd found the texts, "I miss you," beneath the coffee-stained pages of his journal. 3 weeks of his silence, his practiced detachment. She'd spent them dissecting their life, the matching mugs, the way he'd stopped asking about her work, the nights he'd turned away in sleep, his back a wall. "You told me she was lonely. You were lonely." Her voice cracked, then hardened. But it wasn't about her, was it? It was about you running from the mess we made. Andrei finally met her gaze. His eyes were flat, like stones in a riverbed. You're not the problem, Marina. You're the solution you refuse to see. A laugh tore from her, a raw, broken thing. The truth, once a jagged shard in her chest, now sat cold and clear. He hadn't loved her. He'd loved the idea of her, the calm, the stability, the woman who never questioned the cracks in his façade. Perfect love exists and can overcome anything. The lie tasted like ash. She reached for the chipped porcelain cup on the counter, the one he'd bought her for their 3rd anniversary, for my favorite barista. The glaze was warm from the sun. She held it out. One last cup? He didn't move. Her arm shook. The cup slipped. It hit the tile with a sound like a heartbeat stopping. White shards scattered, coffee bleeding into the grout. Andrei flinched, just once, then crossed his arms. You're making a scene. No. She stepped over the fragments, her bare foot brushing a sliver. Pain flared, sharp and cleansing. I'm done pretending. The silence that followed was the loudest thing she'd ever heard. Outside, a car horn blared. Somewhere, a child laughed. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that made the room feel like a stage set. Andrei's jaw tightened. You'll regret this. Will I? She turned toward the door, the weight of the lie lifting. The fear, being alone, discovering her whole life was a lie, was still there. But it no longer drowned her. As she reached for the doorknob, he spoke again, quieter now. What about us? Marina paused. The question hung, unanswerable. Can love be revived after betrayal? She glanced at the shards on the floor, the coffee seeping into the cracks. Then she walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent. Inside, the coffee continued to spread, darkening the tiles like a wound. The amber glow of the bedside lamp painted the room in honeyed hues, but the warmth didn't reach Marina's skin. She sat on the edge of the bed, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the empty space where Andrei's side of the mattress had been for years. The silk sheets, once a symbol of their curated perfection, now felt like a shroud, smooth, luxurious, suffocating. Outside, the city hummed with indifferent life, streetlights bleeding through the curtains in bruised streaks. This is what it means to be alone in a marriage, she thought. Not the kind of alone that comes with silence, but the kind that echoes in the space between two bodies who no longer speak the same language. Her fingers traced the cold metal of the wedding band on her left hand. The weight of it had been a promise once. Now, it was a question. How many times had she rewritten his indifference as devotion? The memory of his voice. You're overthinking it, Marina. It's not a big deal. Played on loop, each iteration a fresh blade. She'd clung to the lie like a lifeline. If we love hard enough, we'll be safe. But the safety had been an illusion, a fragile veneer overwrought. A tremor of anger surged, hot and sudden. She clenched her fists, nails biting into her palms. For years, she'd been the calm one, the one who smoothed fractures with forgiveness. But forgiveness had become a cage. She thought of Sophia, not the woman who'd taken Andrei, but the one who'd met her at the cafe last week, eyes raw with regret. I didn't want to hurt you, Sophia had whispered, and Marina had seen it then, the difference between selfishness and truth. Sophia had been honest about her hunger. Andrei had buried his. The anger cooled, not into resignation, but into clarity. She stood, the floorboards creaking under her bare feet. The mirror above the dresser reflected a woman she barely recognized, eyes shadowed, lips pressed thin, but shoulders straightening. Who am I without the story I've told myself? The question hung, unanswerable, yet no longer paralyzing. She walked to the window, parted the curtains. Dawn was still hours away, but the darkness felt different now, not a void, but a threshold. She peeled off the ring. It left a pale band on her skin, a ghost of the future she'd believed in. The city lights blurred as tears came, but they didn't fall. She let them burn. This is where I begin again, she thought, not with a scream, but with the quiet hum of a decision made in the dark. The bed, the lamp, the walls, all of it would remain. But she would not. The last thing she saw before turning away was her own reflection, no longer waiting to be saved. The lie had been that love was enough. The truth was, she was enough. The night swallowed the question. What remains when you stop being a character in someone else's story? But for the first time, she was ready to find out. Sunlight bled through the gauzy curtains, pooling in honeyed puddles on the parquet floor. Marina's fingers hovered over the edge of the open suitcase, its hollow interior yawning like a promise. She pressed a palm against the dresser's polished oak, warm beneath her touch, the wood grain swirling in patterns that once felt like constellations of their life together. Now, it was just wood. She folded a cashmere sweater, the one Andrei had bought her for their anniversary, the year before Sophia. The fabric snagged on a loose thread, and she hesitated. A flicker of memory, his hand brushing hers as he handed her the bag, the way he'd smiled like he meant it. Or had he? The question coiled in her throat, sharp as the first frost. She dropped the sweater into the suitcase, then yanked it back out. Not this. None of this. The photo on the mantel caught her eye. Them, last summer, laughing on a beach. Her smile in the picture was bright, but the truth lived in the space between her eyes. The moment she'd realized he was checking his phone under the table. She picked it up, traced the glass. For a second, the warmth of the sun on her knuckles tricked her into thinking she could keep the illusion. Then her thumb slipped, smudging the glass. She set it down, face first. A book lay half buried in the drawer. The Year of Magical Thinking, its spine cracked from nights she'd read it by flashlight, pretending the silence wasn't a tomb. She tucked it into the suitcase, not for nostalgia, because it had taught her that grief wasn't a storm to weather, but a room to walk through. The suitcase sat empty again, accusing. What's left? She paced the room, her bare feet silent on the heated floors. The radiator hummed, a false lullaby. She stopped at the closet, pulled out a dress, saffron silk, the color of sunrise. The one she'd worn to his sister's wedding, when he'd held her waist just a little too tight, just a little too late. She held it up, felt the fabric whisper against her skin. Then she let it fall, a heap of gold on the floor. Her hands stilled. The anger had burned itself out, leaving embers of clarity. She wasn't leaving because of Sophia, or because Andrei had stopped seeing her. She was leaving because the life they'd built was a stage set, warm lighting, perfect props, and nothing behind the walls. She knelt, zipped the suitcase shut. The click echoed in the hollow space between the furniture. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent. She didn't look back at the photo. Didn't need to. The question hung in the air, light as the dust motes in the sunbeam. What do you take when the love you trusted was never real? She lifted the suitcase, its weight familiar, final. The door clicked open. Cold air rushed in, but she stepped forward, unshaken. The room behind her stayed warm, but it was no longer her home. Sunlight pooled on the oak floor, gilding the dust motes that drifted between the velvet sofa and the empty armchair. Marina stood in the center of the living room, her bare feet registering the coolness beneath the polished wood. A lie, this warmth. The apartment smelled of lemon polish and stale coffee, the scent of 1,000 mornings that had begun with Andrei's arm slung over her waist. Now the silence was a physical thing, thick as the silk curtains filtering the light. She'd packed only what fit in the canvas tote, a toothbrush, a notebook, a single photograph of her mother. No suitcase, no grand exit, just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the weight of the key in her palm. Her fingers tightened around it. Turn the lock, walk out. Don't look back. But the words felt brittle, like thin ice over a void. Andrei sat at the kitchen table, his back to her, scrolling through his phone. The steam from his untouched tea curled into the air, a ghost of routine. When she'd told him she was leaving, he'd nodded once, eyes fixed on the screen. Do what you need to. No anger, no plea, just the hollow indifference of a man who'd already vacated the room long before she stepped toward the door. Marina inched toward the hallway. The hallway mirror caught her reflection, the two bright smiles she'd worn for Elena last night, the shadows beneath her eyes. Perfect love exists and can overcome anything. She'd believed that once, back when the apartment still felt like a promise. Now the mirror showed only the crack in the frame, the flaw she'd never noticed before. The door loomed ahead, not the heavy oak of the entrance, but the threshold of the apartment itself. The place where she'd dropped her keys, kicked off her shoes, whispered, "I'm home," for 8 years. Today, it was a border. Her breath hitched. What if the world outside is just another kind of emptiness? She reached for the handle. The metal was cool, not warm, the kind of cold that seeped into bones. A sound from the kitchen, Andrei's chair scraping the floor. He stood, but didn't turn. The silence stretched, taut as a wire. Marina's pulse hammered in her throat. This is it, the last chance to pretend. Then, a click, the bathroom door closing. He'd gone to wash his hands, or check his phone, or avoid the moment altogether. Her hand tightened on the doorknob. The key dug into her palm. She thought of Elena's voice last night, sharp with urgency. You're not losing him. You're finding yourself. The air in the hallway felt thinner, lighter. Marina turned the knob. The door swung open, revealing the building's stairwell. Pale yellow walls, the faint smell of old paint. Sunlight streamed through a high window, casting a rectangle of gold on the floor. She stepped across the threshold. No thunderclap, no epiphany, just the quiet click of the door sealing shut behind her. But for the first time in months, the air didn't taste like dust. It tasted like possibility. She didn't look back. The world outside was waiting. And for now, that was enough.